Hey friends, Mazzy here, and this is a very special edition of Whack-A-Mole. I think it's number 58. This is the Whack-A-Mole Cinema Edition. I say cinema because it sounds so uptight and snooty instead of movies. I was inspired by this last night because I was watching B-Side Beth, and I love how she always shows soundtracks in movies, and she did a great showcase some of her favorite upbeat movies, a lot of 80s John Hughes type comedies. I love that stuff too, and I was in I went through my 30s, and so I'm a little older than a lot of you in that respect. But that was a great time, and of course one of the movies she showed was Weird Science, and everybody of a certain age fell in love with Kelly LeBrock. I think actually of any friggin' age fell in love with Kelly LeBrock. Too bad she, married that wanker, or at least treated her like shit, Steven Seagal. But I digress. Whack-A-Mole, I'm going to pick 5 movies and discuss them. Just a little background on myself. I'm a big cinemaphile. Again, a snooty reference for filmologist or movie. Junior high school, I made Super 8 films in high school also, and I had a minor, almost a minor, we didn't really call them minors then, but I was a broadcasting major at San Francisco State, took a lot of film classes, mostly those days film history. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my introduction in film. In the 70s, I was in college in the 70s, and what was amazing about it being in San Francisco had a lot of independent and foreign film screens, movie screens. There's a gentleman named Mel Novikov, and he opened the Surf Theater, theater out in the avenues by the beach on Judah Street that he purchased in the late 50s, and it became one of the first cafes in, cinemas in the country with a cafe called the Cine Cafe adjacent to it. And they would have retrospectives of old films, foreign films, and during the 70s, one of my buddies who I did the Beatles England book with managed that theater for a while, so I would go there all the time. And during college, when I was studying film, I used to see all these films. Again, this was the time before DVDs and VHS even, and so you didn't get to see these films unless they came to a theater. And during the 70s and 80s, San Francisco actually had more screens per capita than any other city in San Francisco. Mel Novikov created a small, one of the biggest and first cinematic indie empires, acquiring other theaters that have foreign films, independent films, the Surf Theater, the Clay Theater, the Lumiere, the Opera Plaza later, and then there's several others, and then the Bridge Theater on Geary Street. If you don't know San Francisco, these streets make no difference. But finally, he rescued the great movie palace, the Castro Theater, right on Castro Street in the Castro district of San Francisco. It had been this rundown, second-rate theater for years, and old, big, ornate, beautiful, and they went through a major renovation. Now it's one of the premier movie palaces of San Francisco. Before every show on the weekends at least, and Friday nights, there's an organ that rises from in front of the stage. Organ player plays it. Always closes out with San Francisco, open your golden gate. And it's a great place for movies. So I study a lot of film, and I became a film fanatic. I'd go to, because of David and because of the Surf Theater, there was a time in college I went to all these great theaters. So not only was I introduced to old American noir films and musicals from the 30s and 40s, Busby Berkeley films, I got really introduced to a lot of foreign films. And the first director that I sort of fell in love with on that was Francois Truffaut. Truffaut is part of the French New Wave of cinema. His first movie was 400 Blows, a movie that I just fell in love with. And I went to see every film of Francois Truffaut after that. He was a film critic and writer on cinema. This was sort of autobiographical overview of his work. He did a very famous interview book, an overview of Alfred Hitchcock. And I used to have it, I can't find it, so I don't know if I still have it anymore. But a great film there. Those of you who don't know the name Truffaut, will know him by sight. He was he did act in some of his films, but Steven Spielberg brought him in to play the French scientist in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He's no longer with us, but Day for Night, Jules and Jim, Don't Shoot the Piano Player, amazing, amazing cinema. So I got into the whole French New Wave, followed a lot of that. And the other name that probably a lot of people know, even if they haven't seen the films, is well, Ingmar Bergman, which is harder to get into, a Swedish filmmaker that was big inspiration, and Woody Allen sort of took things on from him as well. But Fellini was the other one I was thinking about that people should know, and the famous, wonderful film Eight and a Half, and others. Anyway, I got into this whole cinema thing, and I think that's all I'll do for the introduction. In the 80s, I actually did some theater studying, which just as a fun thing, and for 5 years I studied in San Francisco with a woman named Jean Shelton. And not that I ever really wanted to be an actor, but I wanted to see if I could do it. It actually helps me do these videos. And these are 2 books that I bought at the time that I love. And one of these I think I sent to John, Digital Gramophone. I said, hey, you want to work on your videos? This was a while back. Take some acting tips from Stella Adler. I can't remember which one. The Technique of Acting. And An Actor Prepares by Stanislavski. What do these have to do with the VC? I just wanted to give you an overview from where I'm coming from my interest in film. But again, I saw all these films at the Surf Theater. I saw Indian Sajayat Rai films, Indian filmmaker. I saw, all the French New Wave. I saw the Italian films, Buñuel. I saw surrealist films. And one film that I need to mention, it's the film I always love to joke about, love to hate. And every film history class, you sit through this film. And it's a film by Alan Rene, and it's called Last Year at Marienbad. I won't get into it in detail, but 2 people are in this big sort of French chalet, and they're talking about how they've been there before, how they met before, and basically they wander around for 2 hours. And it's a challenging film. I used to joke, actually not even joke, that I hated this film. This is probably, I've seen this film 8 or 9 times, and every time I see it, I hate it more and more. Surreal, beautiful, considered a classic in cinema. And I need to watch it again. I think I need to get a Blu-ray of it. Maybe there's a Criterion version, and see it again, because maybe now I'll appreciate it more, especially in these times we're going through. But anyway, I thought it'd be fun to do a whack-a-mole of films for my cinema collection. Mostly, I started collecting, not too much VHS, but DVDs, and mostly in the 90s, as my son was young growing up. You didn't get out of the house, you didn't go to the movies, so we'd start collecting movies, and I don't really do it much anymore. I do once in a while collect things if it's a really great film that I just feel I need to have, or twice a year Criterion has these 50% off sales, and sometimes I'll do those and grab films that I think are just classics that I love. So without further ado, this is for you, maybe some of these films you know about. I'm into campy teen sex romps of the 80s. I love great comedies. I love action, chase, explosions, Die Hard, revenge movies. And I love highbrow, moody, artistic, conceptual films too. Just depends the mood I'm in. But anyway, I'm going to grab 5, I think, unless I feel like more. We'll see. And maybe you'll get turned on to some films. Maybe I'll pull the same old shit that everyone else knows about. And this is a time we're all kind of, quarantined at home and want to watch a movie if you don't want to binge 36 episodes of some Netflix show. So anyway, 5 random movies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Ladies from Shanghai. This is a great film that was produced and written by Orson Welles. Did he direct this one? Rita Hayworth and Orson Welles. And I think this is the one with the very famous Hall of Mirrors scene that's been replicated from everyone from Woody Allen to action films like John Wick and 2, I believe, and everything else. Great Hall of Mirrors chase scene. What year was this? 1948. Yeah. This is a really good film. I don't remember a lot about the direction of it. You know, Orson Welles, obviously, considered one of the great filmmakers, especially Citizen Kane and The Magnificent Ambersons, which was somewhat of a follow-up to that. Citizen Kane's considered the best film ever made. I don't know if it is, but it's a stunning film, and every student of cinema needs to see Citizen Kane and watch it several times and look at the way it's shot, the way the shots are composited before CG, and there's matte photography, but just the way he lit it, the dialogue, it's an amazing, amazing achievement. Ladies from Shanghai is a cool film too. Again, not one of my favorites, but I love it, and of course Rita Hayworth. Ooh, Baby. So, Columbia classic. I'm picking good ones here. One of my favorite films that became a huge cult film by Terry Gilliam is Brazil. Brazil starred, the first time I ever saw Jonathan Pryce, who was just nominated for Best Actor this past year, because of The Two Popes. He was in Glengarry Glen Ross, but interesting film, bizarre film, has a beautiful version over the closing credits or beginning credits of the song Brazil, which a lot of you know, done by Jeff Muldaur. They use his version of it. Michael Pallin's in it, Bob Hoskins, Ian Holm, Katherine Hellman. A great cameo by Robert De Niro, but very surrealistic, artistic. I would say it's probably the best Terry Gilliam film from my point of view. Terry Gilliam, as you may or may not know, was the animator who did the animation on Monty Python TV show and films. He's done some Baron von Munchausen. He's done the Don Quixote debacle. He's done a lot of films. Time Bandits. You probably know that. It probably is most successful, I think, in terms of box office. But I think Brazil is a cult film that everyone should see too. There are several versions of it, obviously, like a lot of the DVDs and Blu-rays, director's cut, and so on. But, imaginative, funny, dark humor, and just a stunning piece of cinema. Wild at Heart. Wild at Heart, Laura Dern, Nic Cage, where Nic Cage, one of my photographers, Michelle Clement, worked on a bunch of photo shoots, promo photo shoots and magazine shoots when this movie was coming out. David Lynch, this I believe was his follow-up to Blue Velvet, and at the shoot, Nic Cage came to the shoot and he wore that. He was working, maybe this was before. Anyway, he was working on this wearing the snake skin coat because he decided he had to wear that coat to stay in the whole character. And if you've seen the movie, it does sort of his version of his Elvis Presley imitation throughout. Surreal film. I don't like it as much as Blue Velvet, but I like it. I think it's aged well in that weirdness and creepiness and just sheer over-the-top laughter. I don't know if laughter is like humor that David Lynch, even his dark things seem so creepily funny. There's a great cameo too. Barry Gifford wrote what the original novel this was based on, and I remember Barry Gifford wrote a great autobiography of Jack Kerouac, it wouldn't be an autobiography, it'd be a biography of Jack Kerouac. Used to have that book. I used to read a lot about film directors and actors and the whole beat poet scene. So I love reading biographies on those people. Willem Dafoe's in this. There's a great cameo at the end of almost like a big bubble, like the Wizard of Oz, where the good witch is in the bubble, and it's Laura Dern, Sherilyn, not Sherilyn, the other one. What's her name? You know, who plays Laura Dern, not Sherilyn Fay, that's the other one. Sherilyn Finn is not the other, that's Audrey. Well, anyway, she's the good queen in the bit towards the end. The dead Laura Palmer alive. And Isabella Rossellini is also in a bit of it, who is also in Blue Velvet. So, cool film. You know, beautiful film, creepy film. So, great bits on this. I need to watch this again because it's probably been a good 15 years since I've seen it. But this is from the late 80s, 85, 86, I believe. Maybe it was 1990. Anyway, David Lynch, Wild at Heart. Okay, a couple Blu-rays. I can pick some good films, because I have good films, that's why. Woody Allen. I have virtually every Woody Allen film. If you like Woody Allen, go watch a video I did some last fall with The Archivist. We did a two-part, was it a two-part or one-part? I think it was a one. We did it all in one long stretch of going over every Woody Allen movie. I'm a big fan of his. Not gonna get into politics and the bullshit of what's happened and digging up shit from 25 years ago, but great director, an auteur. I mean, again, I should have said in the beginning, I'm a big fan of the auteurs. The auteurs, if you don't know what that means, it's someone who usually creates the entire mise en scène. Mise en scène is sort of a French, not to be like cool or hip, but in film school and cinema, they talk about the mise en scène. It's when you look at credits on French motion pictures, it's the person who creates the scene, almost like the art direction of the film. So it sounds like I'm trying to be cooler and trying to be like highbrow here, but the mise en scène of, it's what auteurs, or Orson Welles, Francois Truffaut, Fellini, Bergman, Woody Allen is a good, he takes, you know, he's influenced by the Marx Brothers, influenced by Bergman, influenced by Truffaut. Sleeper is one of his earlier, funnier movies, the comedy period of Woody Allen, again with Diane Keaton, and it's hysterical movie. He basically wakes up after being asleep for 200 years, and it's a futuristic, really hysterical. I mean, he's just slipping on a giant banana peel, you know, totally Three Stooges, Marx Brothers type slapstick humor, but really cool. Orgasmatron, something that we all should get in our houses. If you don't know what an orgasmatron is, you need to watch Sleeper by Woody Allen. Hysterical film. Really good. And lastly, I got this during my 50% off Criterion. I haven't opened this version, but I've seen this film many times. From 1968, Roman Polanski directed film Rosemary's Baby. One of the best psychological horror films, almost like a drawing room play in a way. It's got John Cassavetes in it, who was an auteur in his own right, a great filmmaker who acts in this with a young Mia Farrow. And a little Beatle connection here, a few Beatle connections, but the one I'm thinking of is, I think as I recall, the exterior of the building is the Dakota. The Dakota, you know, is where John and Yoko lived, where John was killed in front of the Dakota, but many famous people lived in that building. It's on the west side of Central Park in New York. It was built there. I actually read a biography on the Dakota years ago. I have in my Beatles collection, because the reason it was called the Dakota is because when that was built, everything, you know, money and upper class, beautiful apartment buildings were built on the east side. The west side was considered sort of the low rent district in a way. If you middle class, a whole different take than obviously Manhattan is now. So when they built the Dakota, I don't know if it was a developer or some of the banks or whoever, maybe the critics in the New York Times started writing, you know, if they're going to build a building on the west side, you might as well build it in Dakota. So that's a really cool little thing you should think about. Lauren Bacall lived in the building. A lot of famous, obviously, and not so famous rich people live in there. And right down from that in the park is the memorial for John Lennon, West 72nd Street and Central Park West. But this film really changed it for Roman Polanski, who became what is an amazing filmmaker. He also did Chinatown with Jack Nicholson and a number of other great movies, and he's acted in some films. But this is one creepy film. Ruth Gordon is in it. You may know Ruth Gordon maybe by name, but if you know the cult film Harold and Maude, she's Maude in that film. But what a great supernatural classic. And to me, these are the scariest kind of films. I'm not really a big fan of the horror genre or I like horror and creepy films. I don't like slasher films. So I would say this is 1968, and this was also a game changer at the time. What a great year for cinema with Rosemary's Baby and Bonnie and Clyde that year. Changed cinema forever. That period of time, to me, now obviously he did this as an American film. My favorite period of American cinema is 1968 to about 72, 73. The time of the anti-hero. It was that section in American filmmaking that we're getting out of the big studio system and the studio machine where actors and directors in some cases were signed to major contracts. You know, the end of the My Fair Lady world of Hollywood and into the independent, Easy Rider, Deliverance, all these kind of films with nebulous endings and not really upbeat, happy endings. Rosemary's Baby and Bonnie and Clyde are a good example that kind of launched that whole thing. But I love that period. Five Easy Pieces. Jack Nicholson was a part of that. Cuckoo's Nest. That was a little later probably. But anyway, those are my 5 films. Maybe we'll do, if you want more Whack-A-Mole movie versions, let me know. Let me know what you think of these, or these films specifically, or other films by these directors. So, you know, I don't think I can pick a bad movie here. I could pick something maybe, I could pick Cabin Boy, and I love Cabin Boy. If you don't know Cabin Boy, watch Cabin Boy. David Letterman has a cameo in it. Anyway, Mazzy loves you. Take care, you know, be cool at home, and just wait this out and enjoy your music and your movies. And Mazzy loves you. Thanks again, everybody. Take care.